Becoming a master at key switching and unlocking the secrets to key switching is what's going to unravel the layers and layers of realism in Session Horns Pro and in your productions that you do with it. Let's take a look at key switching on a bit higher level. Right here in this sequence, you can see I've got some key switches involved in the animator chords and phrases that I'm using. The key switches themselves are triggering which phrase to play in the animator. And that's great because later on, if I want to change the phrase, I don't have to replay the chord or replay a part. I simply take this note, click and drag it, and bring it up to one of the other animator phrases. I've got two of them going on in a row. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like, the two of them in a row. So one of the benefits of using those key switches for the phrases is that I can just take it and go, yeah, I didn't like that phrase. I'll move it down a step. And that's it. I didn't have to change a whole bunch of notes or replay something. You'll hear as I get to that particular phrase, it will be different. And you saw, I didn't do all that. All I did was move one note down a couple of steps. It makes it really simple. Let's take a look at the key switching on the solo instruments. So I've got a few key switches triggered in here. Don't forget, if you're going to use it to trigger articulations, you'll want to put one at the beginning, even if you're starting in the right articulation, because as you go through and it switches to another articulation, like this one here, the grace note, well, now it's going to be in grace note for every single note until it passes this again. So if I start and there's no starting articulation note, it's going to be on the wrong articulation. We've got a grace note here for this longer tone. What I like to do is play everything in at a normal articulation like vibrato or plain tone, and then kind of close my eyes and think of where is the horn player doing things. Oh, this right here, this should be a growl. This should be a grace note. Really picture where the horn player is going to cut loose and try to think about what I would do if I was playing the track. I addressed the long notes first. I put a grace note on this longer note, and in this track, when we hit this longer note, I played the grace note so that I could use the articulation to trigger the growl sound right about there. And then some staccato stuff for the end. Let's check out this little solo. There's that growl. And then we've got a trumpet solo. Wait a minute, I heard an articulation, but I don't see, halfway through that note, I don't see any kind of key switch for it. Well, let's remember that that particular articulation, the doit, is triggered not by a key switch, but by a pitch wheel, pitch bend. I can go into my event list, hopefully your sequencer has one, and you can see that I inserted this pitch bend right there. It's pretty obvious to me that I inserted it because the chances of me dropping it exactly on the first beat of the measure are not very likely. You can see through this that we can either play this stuff or add it in afterwards using a pencil tool or the event viewer. Well, we took a look at some basic key switches. I didn't reinvent the wheel here. I just took a look at a few of the phrases and said, let's switch articulations, and on some of those long notes, I put a couple of fun little grace notes or something like that. What does this look like, however, at the highest level? At the highest level of realism, using key switches to truly recreate every little sound a horn player can make in a solo. Let's take a look. We've got a sequence here provided to us by the fine people that made this instrument. Let's take a look at what they've got. They've got their key switch at the beginning of this trombone phrase to start the phrase off, but as we can see, there's quite a few key switches in here. There's some for the longer notes, but some of them, there's some on every single note of a phrase. They've really thought this out and said, let's add articulation at almost every twist and turn. When there needs to be a grace note, we'll add an articulation. We're not going to play it because playing it is not as realistic as using the sample of someone actually playing it. And every time they played a short note, rather than just letting their finger go, they chose to really use those staccato samples. And what that's going to do is trigger the release samples, all sorts of great things, rather than just cutting the sample short. As you can see, there's quite a lot of key switching going on here. Just to hear the effect of it, how it affects the sound, let's delete all of these key switches. So much hard work gone. Let's take a listen now and really focus on the trombone with no articulation, just using the same type of playing for the entire time. There's a couple of pitch bends in there. But other than that, it's pretty static. Let's undo and put all those articulations back, and we'll take a look at the instrument as it's playing, and you can see the effects and hear the effects. Might even be best to close your eyes and picture, what would the trombonist do? What would you do if you were playing trombone? Well, first of all, hopefully you'd know how to play trombone. Let's take a look, and let's take a listen. Now watch those key switches at the bottom and how fast it does it. There's just a layer of realism and breath and humanization that just wasn't there before. And the alto sax part does it just as much. It's really quite inspiring. As you can see, the author has chosen to highlight all those key switches as well in this event list. You can see how many there are. Truly a ton. And right now we're looking at just one track. We can pick this track, the trombone, and look at them there as well. It's just amazing what you can do with these key switches and the layer of realism you can bring to your tracks if you become a master at inserting them into your music.